Our second reading today is entitled Center Down by Howard Thurman. How good it is to center down, to sit quietly and see oneself pass by. The streets of our minds seethe with endless traffic. Our spirits resound with clashing, with noisy silence. How about that for a concept? Noisy silence. While something deep within us hungers and thirsts for the still moment and the resting lull. The questions persist. What are we doing with our lives? What are the motives that order our days? What's the end of our doings, and where are we trying to go? Over and over, the questions beat in upon the waiting moment. And as we listen, floating up through the jangling echoes of our turbulence, there is another kind of sound, a deeper note, which only the stillness of the heart makes clear. It moves directly to the core of our being, and our questions are answered. Our spirits are refreshed, and we move back into the traffic of our daily round with the peace of the eternal now in our step. How good it is to center down. Well, I have to admit something to you straight away. I've misled you. We all know the story of the tortoise and the hare, how the condescending, speedy rabbit mocks the slow-moving tortoise. So then the tortoise challenges the rabbit and is so confident that he takes a mid-race nap and ends up getting beat because the tortoise steadily moves along and ends up winning the race, teaching us the virtues of perseverance and humility versus short-sighted arrogance. The misleading part is that there won't actually be tortoises involved in our narrative today, but there will be sea turtles, and it is there that we shall begin. There's an Episcopal priest by the name of Allison Burns LaGreca, and she tells the story about the first time she stopped to see a baby sea turtle crossing the road on the island she lives in. Let's hear her words. It was late morning. I'm already behind. The marshy island air was sitting heavy with heat and salt. And then there she was, crossing the road with an authority I had no business interrupting. She wasn't looking at me. She didn't require my acknowledgement. She was following something so ancient. It existed before names, inside of her, this navigation in her cells, long before language or maps or even the road that she was on. I turned off my engine, and something in me went quiet. Now, friends, it's that internal quiet that's the crux of her story, and she comes back to that later. But momentarily she takes a detour and starts talking about a 6th century Celtic abbot on the island of Iona, a mystic whose name was Columba, who believed that the wind had something to teach him, so he would walk out during gale force winds, letting the force of the air pray through him. And he understood that this wind and the tide and the seabirds all carried theological texts that were worthy of his study, but not regular study, but instead the kind that mystics do, that isn't analytical, but is experiential. How do I inhabit this moment? And then she makes this beautiful observation about mystics. These people see the world so that the world and its things become so transparent to them that they see to the core of things and people, to the holiness that holds that item or that person together. And at the core of this way of being is attention. But don't confuse attention with merely noticing, because anybody can do that. This attention is so deep that in essence it becomes a spiritual practice. And you know how once in a while I say, if you don't hear anything else today, hear this? Here it comes. This attention happens when you slow down enough and pay close enough attention to what you're witnessing. It changes you. So the significance of the event isn't what you're observing, it's how you are transformed by it. She notes that every time you stop your car for something fragile and choose this bit of vulnerability over your schedule, you become transformed just to some degree closer to the person you were created to be. And then that little hatchling turtle that you see on the road is no longer a charming little piece of wildlife at best, or a tiresome obstacle at worst. You understand, and it's something you can't quite put words on, but still there's an understanding that you're connected to that little bit of vulnerability. You are connected to the entire setting, and it touches something essential in you. And my dear ones, this is holy attention. Holy attention. It sounds lovely, doesn't it? Well, it is. And there's a catch. There's always a catch, isn't there? The catch is that it's a discipline, and it's a discipline because our minds resist it, because part of our minds are also on that schedule and that buzzing phone, and there's almost always a little bit of a whisper in that mind that there's something else more important you could be doing right now. And our culture heartily concurs that efficiency is virtuous, time is money, productivity is purpose. And so, it's countercultural for our spirit to ask, but it asks anyway, because our spirit isn't born of a slick society, it's born of a soulful universe. And the soul asks us to slow down long enough to allow what we see to matter to us. Stay long enough for it to register while part of your mind is already thinking about moving past it. In the past several months, my spirit has asked me to stop and allow something happening in front of me to pay attention, for something to really matter. Pretty much all of you know by now, because I haven't been able to stop talking about it. In our backyard this spring, an owl couple emerged as an owl family, and the gift of camera technology allowed us to see it, hallelujah, in ways that we couldn't otherwise. And it was all about the owls, the first arrival of the dad. And then he let his girlfriend have the luxury suite. Many a day she sat down in it while he kept watch. You see him and her there? She was incubating her eggs. About a month later, they hatched into fuzzy little balls. With their parents' care, they flourished Notice the dates, and like just days later, it's remarkable. It wasn't long before they were big enough to perch themselves. This one, by the way, is Biff. All three were named by our 2-year-old nephew, Bennett. This last photo of Biff and Owl and flying is there. We left town a week ago Friday, and when we returned Sunday, they were gone. I've learned from Given that the word is fledged. They fledged. Maybe it's like when people who are about to transition into death wait until their loved ones leave the room to actually die because the loss becomes easier. Well, the departure of these little owls and their parents were a loss for us. For several nights this week after we got back at dusk, I went out into the wooded area where the nest is, just listening for their soft calls. The first night I did have the pleasure of seeing Mom as darkness set in. There she is. You know, and it's funny how I hear them now. Of course, they've always been around. Given assures me they've always been there, Lore. But I'm tuned into it now, and I hear them now. And it reminds me of the Who's song, Getting in Tune, where Pete Townsend speaks to the quieter tortoise and the cockier hare story. Except for Pete, it was an internal conflict between his deep spiritual needs and this persona that he had as an ego-driven rock star. In the song, he says, I get a little tired of having to say, do you come here often? But when I look in your eyes, I see the harmonies and the heartaches soften. And I'm getting in tune, right in tune. And I'm going to tune into you. I knew you'd be nodding, Ruthie. I knew you would. There's nothing more that needs to be said. I'm just banging on my old piano, getting in tune with the straight and narrow. I love his musical metaphor about getting in tune. When an instrument is in tune, it functions the way it's meant to. It does what it is supposed to do, and then from it comes beauty and harmony. So here's a question. Do you ever think in terms of yourself being an instrument? There's a prayer, my buddy St. Francis, make me an instrument of your peace. But imagine for a second that you are a musical instrument that can be in or out of tune. Now, we all know what an out-of-tune instrument sounds like. It's off. It can still be played, but it's absent of its potential beauty that it was made to be. Being tuned in begets being in tune. Attention begets wholeness, holiness. I had a being in tune, being tuned in moment recently, and yes, it is a proscript to my owl story, but it's not about their current stage of emancipation. Actually, it's about them as eggs. The image of those 3 little eggs came to my mind, and it occurred to me that while they were extraordinarily precious, given in a text, because I'm sending this guy pictures and text daily during those days, called them exquisite jewels. They were extraordinarily precious to us. But were they really essentially different than a regular egg? Un momento. Once in a while, Lisa and I get these special eggs, farm fresh from Cynthia, someone here in town. And these are gorgeous eggs, are they not? Gorgeous Easter eggs, but no dye on them. They're special, too. But are they essentially more special than another egg? In this moment that I had, the sacredness of creation came in the manifestation of eggs. It enveloped me. And it wasn't that the owl eggs became less significant, but instead the sacredness of the seemingly mundane came into focus. One could say I had an existential moment of clarity. I know. But seriously, I felt in tune, and I felt gratitude, and I felt humility, and I felt connection. My friends, we don't have to be rock stars to know about the inner conflict that the song speaks to between superficiality and authenticity, or fast-paced distraction versus tuned-in attention. Some of us have been privileged to have hatchlings of one kind or another, sea turtles, screech owls, put in our paths. But what's been placed in your path there, waiting to inspire you, to help the tuning in of your experience? You, an instrument created by and for peace. And here's another question, and it's a little bit of a tougher one. If you're courageous enough to really look, which character in the lesson about the tortoise and the hare resembles you most? Oh, these creatures being teachers. You may know that our theme this month is flourishing together, and when I hear that, I usually think about flourishing with other people, and of course there's something to be said for that. But the stories that we've heard today remind us that flourishing together isn't limited to us humanoids. It has to do with all of creation, and the most humble among us sometimes are the best teachers. Then again, sometimes those humble among us are humans. Take the carpenter from Nazareth, the rabbi, who consistently instructed his followers to pay attention to what is right in front of you, because the holy isn't elsewhere. And it's not in some designated proper space. The holy was then and is now here. And while none of us can have a true grip on what this heaven idea is all about, I'm betting that the slow and steady win the race there. And I also believe that the there is here. It wouldn't surprise me if nirvana resembles turtle and owl baby season, arriving quietly and with vulnerability, asking us to slow down long enough for it to transform us. In a moment, I'm going to offer the microphone to you to hear about some of the ways that maybe there's inspiration on your path, or what you think about this whole concept. But for now, I would ask you to join me in a prayer. Mysterious Creator, you made this world saturated with your presence. You breathe life into all creation and creatures, great and small. We know that we haven't always treated your creation as the holy teacher that it is. We've traded patience for convenience. We've looked away and called our looking away by other names: pragmatism, progress, the cost of doing business. Forgive us for the indifference that we label neutrality and for the harm that comes from our inattention. Grant us the grace of holy attention. Slow us down, quiet what is loud in us. Open our eyes to the small and vulnerable. Give us the contemplative heart of your mystics, who find in you the evening call of a mother owl, who knows the world prays through them. Help us become people who stop and kneel at the edge of the road, who remember that love is measured not by what we say we value, but by what we attend to. Holy Presence, send us back into this world attentive and as stubborn as we are tender in our care. May it be so. I'll turn the microphone over to my friend Kathy now, and I look forward to hearing some of your impressions.